Welcome to the Passive Income Podcast. I am your host, Dividend Dave. Please be sure to join the Passive Income Posse by clicking that subscribe button below. And I'm super excited for today's episode. We have Hayley on Twitter at Hayley Invests. I'm going to throw it over to you, Hayley, to give yourself an introduction.
Brilliant. Yeah, thanks for having me. This is the second time on the podcast. Super exciting. In the space of 1 month, this is my second time being on here. So yeah, thanks for having me again, Dave. I'm Hayley, based in the UK. I have a finance channel on YouTube where I talk all things investing and dividends. I started investing in 2020, so I would still consider myself a pretty newbie to this whole investing malarkey, but honestly, since then, I've become absolutely obsessed. Probably like yourself, Dave. 90% of my day is just spent thinking about investing and finance. And yeah, so thank you for having me back. And let's see where this conversation takes us.
Awesome. Yeah. Again, thank you so much for coming back and spending some more of your time with me. It's awesome to have you. It's awesome that you're in the UK because I've only had one other European guest, European DGI. And so definitely going to be a learning experience for me talking about some of the different companies in the UK and Europe that you are probably interested in or invest in. And yeah, I agree with you 100%. Like it's a great obsession. There's a lot of other way worse obsessions out there. So,
Yes. Yeah,
um, and yeah, we'll definitely get into talking about YouTube as well. So,
that'd be cool.
like you just said, let's see where the conversation takes us, and we'll just go from there.
Cool.
So, I guess one of the first things I'd like to talk about is being female in finance and being a young woman in finance. I've
Mm.
had quite a few female guests on, but
Yeah.
all of them, I think maybe Justine, probably the other younger one in her 30s, and then a lot of others in their 40s. So I guess just the perspective of being both female and being young in
Yeah.
investing.
Yeah. There's definitely a lack of representation in that area for sure. And Dave, that was one of the main reasons why, alongside a couple of other reasons, being that I was absolutely obsessed and needed to talk about it all the time. But one of the main reasons that I started the channel, because I just felt like there were amazing people talking about investing, talking about finance, but they were relatable to some degree, but there were just no women talking about it. And I was trying to think, well, maybe I should. I'm a beginner, I'm a woman, I'm kind of young. Why not actually come at it from that perspective? So that was, yeah, but there's definitely a lack of representation in that area. And I would say that it is a little bit off-putting in terms of when you start getting interested in investing and you don't see people like you talking about it
Right.
and doing it, and you think, oh, okay, well, maybe maybe I shouldn't be doing it. Maybe this isn't something that I should actually be interested in or do. And there's, for me as well, I still battle with this quite a lot, honestly, but especially when I first started, I almost felt like I didn't have the right, I didn't have the confidence and the knowledge to speak about it because it's such a quote unquote man's world, investing in finance
Yeah.
historically, right? And so I definitely had a little bit of,
Imposter syndrome.
yes, that is exactly it. Yeah. But I hope that I've at least inspired one woman along
I'm
the
sure
way.
you have. I'm
I hope
100% sure you
so.
have, and I think it's great what you're doing. And yeah, it's amazing to have that female voice and female perspective. As the my viewers and listeners know, like I try to do about 10 or 12 per month, and out of those 10, it's like maybe I can get one woman, one female, so it's like 10%
Yeah.
of the content on the Passive Income podcast is from that female perspective. So
Mm.
I really appreciate all of the women that have been on here and the future ones that are willing to come on and talk because obviously men and women think differently. So,
True.
sometimes it can be eye opening for me too, just hearing a different point of view and a different perspective. And it's like, oh, I didn't think of it that way before.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. I think there's, whoever it is, there's a lot to learn from anyone. And it is interesting to see the different mindsets. I don't know if you've heard about this, but there's a lot of studies into investing and finance in general, talking about men and women and how men tend to be more risk takers and
Yeah.
more willing to take on risk for bigger reward, whereas the women tend to be more less risky and would rather guarantee sort of market average rather than taking on those extra risks. So that's a big difference that they've, looked at time and time again. And whenever I'm sort of panicking that I'm making a risk, I try and always think, okay, well, what would my male counterparts do? Would they see this as a big risk, an accepted risk? And I think, do you know what? They probably would. And I should push myself a little bit more.
So, yeah, I mean, obviously risk can equal reward, but also risk is
Yeah.
the word risk for a reason.
Yeah.
So, and sometimes I think exactly what you just said, but to the opposite way of thinking of like, would a woman do this? If are they gonna just think a little bit more conservatively? Like,
Yeah.
just invest in those, those conservative dividend paying stocks that you're gonna get that dividend deposited into your
Yeah.
account every month or every quarter, whatever they pay, and just be happy with that, say 5% yield or whatever it may be.
Yeah. So why do you think there's like a lack of women and young women? Do you think they're just not interested, or do you think it's a case of they don't feel confident, or
I'm sure confidence is a big part of it.
yeah.
Um, the thing that I really don't get is that in the traditional household,
Mm,
with a traditional household being a husband, a wife, and 2 or 3 kids, right, and a
mm,
dog and a cat.
yeah. Very much average, the average house.
Right.
Yeah.
In those situations, like 99% of the time, it's the woman is the ones, budgeting for groceries and budgeting to pay the bills and budgeting. So they're in charge of the budget and therefore in charge of the majority of the money. So I
Mm,
don't get why there aren't more women using that budget and paying themselves first, paying them and their husband first or whatever coming out of, again, in this day and age, it's usually both people working, the husband and the wife.
mm,
And so that's the part that is mind-boggling to me, right? I don't
yeah.
get that.
Yeah, nor me. Hopefully over time, slowly, slowly it will start to change, and girls at school will start thinking, actually, this is important. I do need to think about this and plan for
Right.
my financial future as well.
Yeah. Before we get into it any further, I'm gonna give a shout out to Buy Investing shirts. You can use the link in the description, code
Cool.
word
I like it.
Posse. My other
Did
one, the
you
passive
have
income
dividends?
podcast one, is actually in the laundry right now, so
You wear it too much. It's that good.
yeah, exactly.
I
So,
like it. I like it.
yeah, link in the
Hey, can I
description, use the code word Posse and, save yourself 5%. They have tons of great merch over there, all sorts of dividend investing merch and several passive income Posse merch as well, including, um, a what we call in Canada a toque. I think the rest of the world would call it a beanie, like a winter hat.
Yes, okay.
And there's, hoodies like this that say Passive Income Podcast, the T-shirts, etcetera. So definitely check out their merch over there. I do wanna talk more about your YouTube channel. You mentioned it. I'm gonna just pull it up here on the screen because earlier
There
today
I
I was
am.
yeah. Earlier today, I was on the videos, page of this and just scrolling down and down and down and down and down, and I was like, "Oh, wow, you've put out, like, tons of videos in the last year or year and a half or so." So I guess you already touched on a little bit, but a little more about how you got started with YouTube and why and how that YouTube journey is going.
Yeah, yeah, you're right. I have put out a lot of videos. In January, I was trying to do, actually, I managed to achieve it, 4 videos a week, plus a live, plus short form content on the days that I wasn't posting, which was crazy with a full time job. I must say,
Right.
it was really hard. Not doing that so much now, trying to more aim towards 3 times a week. But yeah, I've tried to put out as much content that I feel is valuable as possible, which has turned out to be quite a lot. I started the channel for, I guess 2 main reasons. One was because this sounds probably not geeky towards you, but anyone that's not interested in investing, I was just researching investing so much. It was all I was pretty much thinking about. I became obsessed, and there's only so much you can speak about investing to the people in your life that actually don't really care. So I wanted to, just speak about it to people that did care and build a community. And the other reason was, like I was saying, there was a lack of representation, I felt like. So I did it for that too. But yeah, I've been really, really enjoying it. managed to get to just over, what's that say, 4.2 thousand subscribers now. So I never thought that would happen. So I'm super, super proud of that, honestly. It's a really small channel in the grand scheme of things. But when I first started, I didn't even think I'd get to like 1,000 ever. So it's pretty cool, in my opinion. But yeah, just got to keep going and keep posting as much as I can.
Yeah, definitely keep going. I think what you're doing is great. Giving a voice to the younger
Mm.
generation of women, and I know you have a lot of male viewers as well. When we paired your channel on the live stream, we had quite a bit of your audience joining us, and that was very fun.
Yeah, they're great. They're great. Actually, when I first started, because you can, for those of you who don't know that are listening, on YouTube, you can see the breakdown of male and female viewers. Obviously, only if they put that information in and they've got a YouTube channel. And when I first started, up until very recently, it was something crazy like 98, 99% male. Now I think I've got maybe nearly 10% female viewers, which is still the
Very low.
minority. Yeah, for sure. But to have 1% to 10%, I'll take that. It's something.
Yeah, cool. Let's get into talking about some of the what I know very little to nothing about the UK market, the European
Yeah.
markets. Um, and I'm sure a lot of this I know it is because, like I said, I was scrolling through your videos. I've watched obviously some of your videos, and so I guess just you know the FTSE and other indexes in Europe. Um, uh, do you invest primarily in the London exchange, or I
Yeah.
guess just like I was gonna say
Yeah.
just kind of go through maybe a little breakdown of your portfolio and what you like and what sectors you're heavy into?
Yeah. Yeah. Let me do that. And then I'm really interested. I've got some questions for you about your portfolio as well. So we'll get on to that.
Okay,
Um,
sounds fair.
so, okay. I have in my portfolio, I have a selection of UK on the FTSE 100 mainly. Do I have any FTSE? Because in the UK, we have FTSE 100, which is the large cap companies. And then we have the FTSE
Right.
250, which is like the next ones down in terms of cap size. So I have mainly FTSE 100 dividend paying UK stocks within my dividend section of my portfolio. Alongside that, I have some ETFs, both which pay a dividend actually. So I have VUSA, which is an S&P 500 ETF, and that pays a dividend, but it's not primarily there for its dividend. It just pays one as well. And then I have
Hmm.
VHYL, which is the Vanguard's high dividend yield ETF. That one is more so obviously driven towards dividends, given its name, high dividend yield ETF. And it has those companies that pay slightly higher on average dividends. So, yeah, so far we've got the UK stocks, dividends. Then we've got the ETFs, which are the American markets, mainly, sorry. Again,
Hmm.
pay me dividends. And then I also have a selection of my portfolio that is going to be more into growth stocks, mainly Tesla, Apple, Microsoft. Obviously, a couple of them, like I've just Apple, Microsoft, they pay a dividend, but
But
I'm
there's a
not
very
really viewing
tiny yield.
exactly. Yeah, I'm not really viewing it as I want them because they pay a dividend. I want them for other reasons. If they pay a dividend, fine. But I'm kind of in my mind separating it into the other bit of my portfolio.
Makes
Um,
sense.
yeah, so that's kind of where I am. The majority do pay a dividend at the moment, and I am very interested in dividend investing, but I'm not only in that, you know?
Yeah. No,
I was
so
gonna
again,
ask,
being younger, looking at that growth too, I think that's a great idea. I
hmm,
am
yeah,
curious in that the FTSE 100 that you mentioned, where
yeah.
your dividend payers are. What sector or sectors are you heavy into?
So I've got, well, I guess consumer goods is pretty heavy. Um, Interestingly, I think this is going to be quite a flip to what your portfolio is. I don't really have exposure to many banking stocks, the banking sector. And I think the reason for that is because, in my opinion, and this is just my opinion, there doesn't really seem to be a great option in the UK. Like there's lots of
Right.
good Canadian banking stocks, like really, really good ones. And trust me, I'm considering a lot of them. But in the UK, we have our HSBC, we have our NatWest, and these are, just maybe just random words to some people, but they're not as good in terms of capital appreciation and dividends as a lot of the Canadian ones. So I do lack that in my portfolio a little bit. I think I get that exposure from the other the ETFs that I have, which aren't
Right.
UK based, but I'm kind of viewing it as an overall thing rather than I must have a banking stock in the UK. Like if it's not a company that I want, I don't care if it's in the UK or not. I will rather have a Canadian bank that is better, So yeah,
I was
I
actually Googling.
go on.
Sorry, I was actually Googling this morning trying to find information if Canadian banks were traded on the FTSE exchange, and I couldn't find anything saying that they were. So I don't think any of them are.
Yeah, I think because I still need to look into this actually. If we invest into US stocks, we pay a withholding tax of 15%. I don't know if it's the same if we invest in Canadian stocks. Maybe we have to just pay a little bit more in tax, like an extra
Yeah,
percentage.
I'm not the tax guy. I'm not the person to ask that
Yeah,
question
no,
to
I
at
need
all.
to look into it, but I still am wondering if it's worth just paying that extra bit and having maybe a company that I believe in a little bit more. But
Right.
is your portfolio quite heavy in terms of financial sector or?
Not at all.
Oh, is it not? Okay. What have you got in yours
So actually, I
sector-wise?
only have the one Canadian bank, and
Okay.
I just started it a couple months ago. And the reason I started it's Bank of Nova Scotia, and the only reason I started with that one out of the other five is because that's the one that holds the mortgage on my house. So it's kind of like,
Oh, fair enough.
yeah, my concept of turn that cash register around,
I like it.
try to get them to pay me enough to pay them.
Yeah. Do you ever walk around and like spot companies that you could invest in too? Like
Oh,
I
all the
don't think
time.
yeah, I don't know if the average person does, but when I'm walking along the street and I see Starbucks, I'm thinking, okay, do I want a coffee or do I actually want to just invest into them? I think that's the
Yeah.
investor mindset.
Oh, so often, like, I see so again, there's a train track that runs back there outside that window. It's a
Yeah.
CNR,
Okay.
Canadian National
Yeah.
Railway. Every time a train goes by 10 and 20 times a day, I'm thinking I should own stocks in that company.
Yeah. So you don't
You
at the
know
moment?
no, I don't,
Okay.
but same here, Tim Hortons, McDonald's,
Yeah.
Home Depot, Lowe's, Walmart, Costco,
Yeah.
you
It
you
just keeps
go by
going.
all of them and you think, "Hmm, should I own," and then you reel yourself back in saying, "Well, I can't buy every single company
No.
out there," right?
Yeah. So do you have any companies in your portfolio that don't pay a dividend?
I just sold, 3 of the 4 last week.
Okay.
They were had become just dogs, and I took a small loss on them, and it was
Yeah.
kinda like it was more for my peace of mind, just getting them out of my portfolio. And then the only one I have left that's a non-dividend payer is, uh, a lithium company, and
Okay.
my mindset there is, electric vehicles. There's
I'm
gonna
with
be a
you
lot
there.
of like a lithium there's gonna
Yeah.
be a lot of lithium needed for the batteries in
Yeah.
these, EVs. So I'm just kinda holding that one. Again, it's a small position, so and it's actually done fairly well in terms of growth from when I bought it, so just
Yeah.
hold that for who knows how long, year, 2, 5, we'll see where
Yeah.
I'm comfortable holding that one. The other 3, I was just like, "I just gotta get rid of these out of my portfolio
Yeah.
and allocate that money into something I believe in more, which will pay me a dividend."
Yeah. In two interesting things that actually come to mind there. The first one is how you mentioned you sold the companies, which do you know what I think is so important sometimes to actually just accept that selling is not the end of the world. Like there are reasons that you would want to sell a position, but I think when you first start out in investing, this buy and hold mentality, which is obviously very important, but there are cases where you just have to say, do you know what? This is not doing what I wanted it to do anymore. I got, my money needs to go elsewhere. It's more important for it to go into this stock. I've made a mistake. Let's just take some gains. And that's something that I've only really started learning more recently because I was always under that mindset of once it's in that portfolio, it is staying.
Yeah.
Warren Buffett, it needs to stay. And the other thing as well about the lithium stock, the video actually that I've got coming out on my channel today is a lot about this, but with lithium in general, the cost of producing these lithium ion batteries is actually coming down by quite a lot, which obviously means that the adoption of electric cars and everything will be way, way better. More people purchasing electric cars, more profit margins on them electric vehicles for the manufacturer equals better opportunities for the investor. So yeah, I 100% agree with you on that one. I think that obviously picking a company is difficult, but in general, the lithium producing stocks are, yeah, I think it's going to be good.
Yeah, they just seem very attractive to me. There was
Yeah.
2 I was looking at the time, and I
Mm.
kinda wish I had have bought both of them. The only reason I
Okay.
didn't buy the other one is just because it cost quite a
More.
bit, like 4 times as much, so it's like, "Oh,
Yeah.
I can get more stocks of this one at whatever price it was trading at the time."
Yeah.
So and that was the primary decision because both looked really, really attractive for the
Mm.
reasons you just mentioned, right? Like, we know there's gonna be a lot of lithium mined over the next 10 years
Yeah.
for these for the batteries in electric vehicles.
Yeah, for sure. I need to have a little look into maybe some stocks that I could add there. Yeah.
Yeah, and the other one for the electric vehicles is copper. I don't have anything
Mm.
in copper or that position, but I've
Yeah.
had a few other guests mention it when I've talked about my position in lithium. They're like, "Yeah, and there a lot of copper goes into those electric vehicles as
Yeah.
well." So, just
Yeah.
a just an idea.
Yeah. It's definitely interesting to have a look into what is coming down in terms of the cost that it takes to produce something. Because if the cost is coming down to produce certain things, it's probably going to be a good investment opportunity. Like if you think of computers back in the day, they were so hard and expensive to manufacture, which means people weren't really buying them as much. And, as an investor, it probably wasn't all that great. But if you got in at the right time, when the cost started falling on these things, they were then selling more. And imagine if you were one of the early ones in Microsoft. Would have been crazy. Would have been
Right.
crazy. Yeah,
Yeah.
for
I
sure.
just find it amazing now too, like, the amount of computing power that we hold in our hands with our smartphones or
Yeah.
with our laptops. It's like we have 10 times more computing power in our smartphone than they had in 1969 when they sent missions to the moon, right? It's absolutely mind-boggling to me.
Yeah. It is mad. It is mad.
Getting back to your portfolio and, uh, so I guess just sort of a breakdown of what sectors are sort of top to bottom, what, and what companies, because I'm interested in learning more about, some of the UK and European companies that you might hold.
Yeah. So one of the ones that was doing very, very well for me recently was a company called Rio Tinto. I think it's an Australian and British company, actually. It's a mining company.
Yep, they're huge.
Yeah, absolutely massive company. They recently announced a dividend cut, which has made a lot of people a bit like, "Ooh, okay." Which I think I haven't looked at it, but I think it's probably caused the stock price to fall a little bit. So they're a big one in my portfolio. I've got Diageo. I don't know if you've heard of them. You probably have. Oh, okay. They're the producer. They're like the, how do I explain this? You know how some companies have a brand name and then they have all their brands that they own with all different names.
Yep,
They're like that. So they have lots of alcohol brands basically that you'd have definitely heard of. So that's another big one. Interestingly, I think Warren Buffett had a position in Diageo once upon a time. I don't know. I don't think he still does, but it was one of the only UK companies that he's ever had a position in. Um, and it's a company that a lot of people, including Warren, actually would say that there's an economic moat there because they're such a big company that no one can really touch them. They have all these brands that are just consumed all the time. And when you look at what brands they have, if you think about it from the point of view of going to the shop and not seeing any of these brands on the shelf, it would almost be like an apocalypse has happened in the alcohol aisle. Like it wouldn't be right. Do you know what I mean? So I just
yeah,
don't see that company going anywhere anytime soon. Of course, there's the argument of they have the named brands, which are a little bit more expensive. So perhaps competition could come along. But even so, I think they're right up there. Um, what was I saying? I've gone completely off track now, Dave. What did you ask me? It's about my sectors, right?
Yeah, so actually, I'm gonna jump in there and
Go for
back
it.
to the Rio Tinto dividend cut.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I've experienced a couple dividend cuts in the past few months
It's
as
been
well. They're
mad,
never
hasn't
fun.
it? Yeah.
Dividend cuts are never fun. But I
No.
think the idea is hoping and realizing that the dividend growth companies, the ones that give you raises,
Yeah.
hopefully will outpace the ones that cut their dividends
Yeah.
over time, right? So
Yeah.
I guess
That's a good
that's
one.
kind of my thoughts on dividend cuts and just living through them and just kinda sticking with your guns sometimes. Like, I still held both companies that cut. One was, 2 months ago, and the other one was 3 or 4 months ago.
What companies
And
were they that have been cutting recently for you?
Algonquin Power, at the start of
Okay.
January, was cut, and then just one of my REITs was cut in,
Right.
O late October, early November.
And are they companies that have cut their dividends before, or was this quite unheard of for those guys?
For Algonquin Power, I'm not sure if they ever have in the past, but if they had, it hadn't been in a really long time. Like, they're a
Okay.
pretty massive player
Mm,
in the, like, power and utilities sector in
okay.
both Canada and the US, so but
Yeah.
at the same time, everyone saw it coming, so people were prepared for it, and it was like, "Okay, well, now that it happened, it's happened, and we can move on." And,
Yeah.
yeah, the stock price dropped drastically.
Yeah.
And at the
Always
time,
does.
too, I was looking at it going, "If everyone else is fearful right now, should I be greedy?" And
Yeah.
I didn't buy any more, and now I kinda regret not buying any more. The share price had dropped below $10 Canadian, obviously,
Yeah.
and it was when I bought it, it was at something like 17 or 18,
Oh, whoa.
Canadian
Okay.
dollars. So, it was like, "Should I grab some while it's under 10? Because
Yeah.
they've cut their dividend, they're trying to, like, rearrange their cash flow and get themselves back on track. I didn't. I regret it a little bit, but at the same time, it's like, "Okay, well, I did put those dollars towards whatever else where I'm
Yeah.
still getting my
Hindsight is a
dividends in other
great thing.
companies, right?" So,
Yeah,
I
exactly.
don't overly regret it, but yeah, living through dividend cuts are never fun. And then on your second point there about, the company that has all these different brands
Radio,
in the
yes.
shops and grocery stores, it made me really think of Pepsi, right? Like, Pepsi has all these
Yeah.
different
Yeah, yeah.
brands under their umbrella
Yeah.
and very comparable. Like, if you walked into a grocery store and suddenly there was no Pepsi, no Frito-Lays, nothing of a Pepsi brand name, you would be like, well,
Yeah.
first of all, the store would be half empty, right?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. And those are the companies that, you know, they have so many different revenue streams from so many different products that if one of their products needed to be recalled or just discontinued, whatever the reason was, they two things. One, they can carry on because they've got other revenue streams. And two, they're really smart because if you think about a company that has lots of brands under it, and one of those brands, let's say, did you say Lay's is one of Pepsi's?
yeah,
Yeah.
Frito-Lays is,
Okay, so let's just say that they had some sort of lawsuit or they were in the news and people were sort of going, do you know what? I don't think I want this anymore. Most consumers wouldn't be able to know and match up in their head that that is from Pepsi. Therefore, I will stop buying all Pepsi products. They don't
right.
think of it like that. So this one company could go completely gone, but yet they would still do well because of all these other companies. And the average consumer wouldn't think, do you know what? This is actually Pepsi's fault. Therefore, two and two together, I'm not going to buy any of them. So it's a very, very smart strategy. But on the point of dividend cuts as well, I think it's really important to look into why they're cutting their dividends because, of course, sometimes a dividend cut could be like, hang on, I should probably, maybe I don't want this anymore. But like you were saying, sometimes it's for actually good reasons. Maybe it was outside of their control. Maybe they're looking to do X, Y, and Z, whatever it is. So yeah, I like the point that you made there about it might still be a company that I actually do want. So yeah,
Yeah, and that's definitely the way I feel with Algonquin Power is they're
yeah,
still gonna be a company 5, 7, 10 years down the road,
yeah.
and we're gonna look back on January of 2023, and nobody's gonna even really remember or think about that dividend cut that happened, in
Yeah,
my opinion, so
yeah, for sure. And how long have you been investing? I don't think I ever asked you. Is it, is it
That's a
quite
really long story that you have to go over to other podcasts where I've been a guest and told my whole
right?
story.
Okay. Is it like you're quite a newbie to investing, or you've been doing it and then came back to it, or what's the really short story?
Yeah, so got in, so around 19, 20 years old, and you have to really
Okay.
rewind back to the early 90s because 'cause I'm
Yeah.
old, and thanks
You're
for
not old.
agreeing so quickly.
No, I'm laughing because you're saying you're old. You're not old.
Oh, you'd be surprised. So yeah, back in the early 90s, obviously we didn't have smartphones or apps on our smartphones or internet or anything like that, so investing was very different, but I got
It
into
would
it
have been.
and, yeah, life happened and this and that, and then I kinda withdrew everything I had invested,
Yeah.
and then in the mid 2000s when suddenly there was online banking, I started investing again,
Yeah.
but again, now that it was like very high commissions, like it started out at 29.95 or
Oh,
99, then
whoa.
finally dropped to 9.95
Cool.
yeah, so it was like you can't just buy 1 share or a fractional share,
No.
so you're like, "Okay, I need to buy 100 shares," but even at $6 a share, that's like $600 that I need to
Yeah.
come up with, right? So, um, dabbled a little bit through the early 2000s and then sort of got out of it again until just more recently, which this is gonna sound, I guess, kinda cruel. Divorce was one of the best things that ever happened to me, and
It is for a lot of people.
yeah, with that said, like, my ex-wife and I were still on it was a very amicable split, so we're still on
Yeah.
good terms, we still text each other, she still comes over to see the dog and things like that, so, but financially, it was really good for me that, um her whole I tried to explain the strategy of dividend investing to her the entire time we were married, but all she could ever see was like that, the 3 cents, 5 cents, 10 cents at the beginning. She couldn't see the long-term picture of, "Oh,
Yeah.
that's gonna snowball and turn into $50, $100, 500,
Yeah.
$1,000 a month," right? So, yeah, just in the last few years since that divorce is when I have gotten way more heavily into investing and with that more or less 100% other than that one stock, but
Yeah.
99.9% dividend investing strategy where I need a company to be paying me a dividend is pretty much one of the top priorities for me to be investing in it, and then look at the other things of like, okay, is it a safe dividend yield? Is it high?
Yeah.
Is it risky? Well, I mean, all the different metrics that we need to look at. So that's
Yeah.
the abbreviated version, but if you go over to, the Green Candle IT podcast with Brandon,
Okay.
I go into great detail, and same with, the One Penny at a Time podcast with Harris.
Okay. Yeah.
I've been a guest on those 2 podcasts, and I give a much longer version of that story, and even my short story right now seems kinda long.
No, it's interesting. It's always interesting how people get into it and like what their story is. Would you say that in terms of how you were saying that the small dividends initially puts people off? I feel like that is such a true thing because when you're putting $100, £100, 1,000, you're building your portfolio up and you're only getting pennies, cents, whatever back. That can be really demoralizing because you think, why on earth am I bothering? Like, how is this going to ever be worth it? But it's not until you realize that reinvesting those dividends and accumulating more shares and doing it time and time and time again that it actually becomes more substantial. And it's really helpful to look at people that have done that and actually see that, yes, their portfolio is massive now, but equally, they started in exactly the same place and they've
Right,
just been consistent every single month. They've been reinvesting and buying more shares. So yeah, it is. I think once you can see where it can get you and where it can go, it becomes even more motivating as a strategy to follow. And I get a lot of people comment asking me why I'm interested in dividends at such a young age and I should be, way more risky in growth stocks and stuff. And two things. One, I am interested in growth stocks, but I am also interested in dividend investing and motivation that it gives you is one of the main reasons. And if something's going to motivate you to stay investing, it's got to be a good thing, right? It's got
yes.
to be for
I
sure.
do feel like you've given me an opening there to use my favorite British word.
Go on, throw it out there.
Yeah, so, like you said, you invest 100 quid and you get that 1 quid dividend. I just had to use it.
You love that word, don't you? Quid. Yeah. British
I
quid.
so I used to, when I lived out in, BC, I was a snowboard instructor, so I had a lot of friends from the UK and Australia
Okay.
and all over the world, and
Yeah.
yeah, so I picked up on quite a few, slang words from different countries, and that was one that always stuck with me.
Yeah, it's quite a funny word, quid. I should use it more than I do.
But no, like you said, that initial beginning
Mm,
is it should be motivating, and you see it on Twitter where, and I mentioned this a lot too in the podcast, the positivity in the Div Twit community where people are posting, I made a
yeah,
dollar dividend, I made $10 dividend, I made 100, I made 1,000, and
yeah,
but both ends of the spectrum, everybody's on there saying, "That's great, that's amazing,
yeah,
keep
it's
going,
cool.
keep doing what you're doing," right? And it for those people who are starting out, and I'm not far ahead of that person who's making a dollar a month, like, I'm only at a couple hundred a month, but still. And then I view my quarterly dividends as bonuses
Yeah,
that come in every 3 months, right? So, but yeah, it's just get started and just keep going, and don't be unmotivated by
yeah.
those initial ones that could be 50 cents or 50 pence or whatever, and, just keep going.
Yeah, definitely. How much interest do you pay in terms of a dividend yield? Like, is that something you care about, or do you sort of not really care too much? Because you were saying you primarily look for dividend companies, so I wondered how much you care about dividend yield. Because for me, it's not a metric that I really care too much about. Like, if it pays a nice yield, great. But I would sometimes when I see a really high yield, I'm a bit like, oh, what's going on here?
Very leery. So, that's a
Yeah.
great question. I didn't know this was gonna turn into you asking me a whole bunch of questions,
Sorry,
but
I'm
that's
just
okay.
interested. I get interested in other people's investing journey a lot. Sorry.
I'm okay with it. So, that's a very interesting question for me because on the low end, I look for those what I call the safe yields, the 3 to 5%.
Mm,
And then, as you probably know, from my tweets and from other podcasts, and we've talked before on when we had John and Justine on the live panel, I'm heavily invested into REITs, Canadian,
okay,
real estate REITs. And REITs tend to be in that 6 to 9%, and I feel with a REIT, because they're obviously structured very differently, that
yeah.
6 to 9% is also for me, falls into that safe
Safe,
category.
yeah, yeah, I get you. Yeah.
Now, I do have to tell you about one ETF that I have. It's a covered
Okay.
call ETF, and
Oh,
the last
okay.
time I checked, the yield was 16%.
Oh, wow. Which ETF is it?
It's called, DFN. It's, DFN.TO, probably because it's Toronto Stock Exchange.
Okay. I've not heard of it.
No, it's a dividend split, so it holds 5 company or 15 companies, and the 15 companies it holds are very strong, like, it holds the Canadian banks, the
Okay.
Canadian telecoms, I think
Yeah.
a couple of the Canadian, insurance companies, but at the end of the day, all of those companies that they hold, their dividends don't add up to 16%.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So, the way they're doing it is, selling covered calls, and actually, I'm not sure if you know Rusty Ram on Twitter.
A note
He
of, yeah.
Yeah, he was a guest on here, and I was telling him about this, and then, like, less than a week later, he had a video on his channel about how they were doing it. So I was like, "Oh, wow, okay."
Yeah, it's interesting. It is really interesting because, like you said, you look at these companies and you think, hang on a second, they're not adding up to 16%. What on earth are they doing here? Do
Right.
you view that holding as like one of your riskier holdings? Like, do you feel okay having that or
I I guess yes and no, as long as that dividend keeps coming in every month and,
yeah,
every it's basically, I think, 10 cents a share per month, so every 10 shares is
mm,
another dollar, and it's like,
that's true.
that adds up quick when it's only a 7 or $8 stock to, like I said, 16% is
Yeah,
pretty high. It might be 15% now if the share prices went up a little bit, but either way, 15, 16% is an extremely high yield. Um, so yeah, I do feel, I guess, a little leery about it, but at the end of the day too, um, as long as I've held it, which has only
doing
been
what
a
you
few
want
months
to do.
now, I just keep getting again, my position in it is relatively small too, like
Yeah,
60 or 70, maybe 80 shares. So getting that $6 or $7 a month, I'll take it. And,
yeah,
60, 70 shares isn't like a huge, isn't like hold. Actually, one other person who was a guest on here who actually turned me onto the stock, I think he has like over 3,000 shares in it. And I think at
well,
that point, I'd start to get a little more
yeah.
concerned about such a high yield.
Yeah, I think the concern comes. is it sustainable? They're going to cut that yield at some point, and then you're going to be like, oh, well, I've gone from having this amount coming in a month to whatever amount a month. But
Right.
yeah, if it's not a massive part of your portfolio, then to be honest, it's nice to have. But if they cut, then so be it, kind of
It,
thing.
right.
Yeah,
It's not gonna kill you or really,
yeah,
destroy your portfolio at the end of the day. So
yeah. You can still sleep at night.
exactly, exactly. Going more back to your portfolio, what else is in there? Like you kind of mentioned those top two, Rio Tinto and the alcohol one, Diageo. Was that the name of the company?
Diageo, yeah, it's Diageo. Believe that's how you spell it. Yeah, definitely have a look into them, Dave. You
Sure.
might find them interesting. Um, yeah, so let me pull up my portfolio and we can actually just take a look at what's in there. I'm
Sounds good.
gonna be making some adjustments soon. I think there's
Yeah.
so like I was saying, I'm quite eager to have. I don't know if I said this on here actually, or I'm going mad, but I'm eager to start adding some Canadian and some US dividend paying stocks into my portfolio. But the reason I've been a little bit hesitant is because of that 15% withholding tax. So I kind of want to just pick maybe one or two and have a bit of a larger position so that it doesn't see, so I'm not paying 15% on loads and loads of positions. So
Right.
yeah.
I am wondering because obviously Canada is still a Commonwealth country, so maybe the tax might the taxes may be different. Again, that's something people would have to look
Yeah.
into to find out. I'm not the person to ask about taxes.
Yeah, and to be honest, I think it's see, I could be wrong as well. I think it's definitely 15% on the US stocks, and I'm starting to think that it's 15 on the Canadian as well. But yeah, I'll definitely check. Right. I'm just pulling my portfolio up so we can actually have a little look. We can go through a couple.
So definitely a future video idea for Haley figuring out the Canadian
I
taxes.
know, no, I do need to. Okay, so Legal and General. I don't know if you're going to have heard of these companies, but Legal and General, an insurance company.
Never heard of them.
Okay.
Do they pay a dividend?
Yes, all of these do. All of
Okay.
these do. We have got National Grid, which is the like gas and electricity provider in the UK, another really, really big company.
So is that
Unilever.
who you pay your like electricity or gas bill
No,
to?
so they're no. So they're the like it probably is easier if you just Google it rather than me trying to explain, but they own the national grid. So they own all the what's it
The
called? Like
infrastructure.
yes, yeah, that word. Yeah.
Okay.
Have you heard of Unilever?
Oh yeah, of course.
Okay, Unilever. Yeah, I was going to say, I think you probably would have heard of that one. BA Systems, you heard of
That
defense company?
sounds familiar.
Yeah, yeah, it's possible that you've probably come across them at some point. Um, HSBC, which is a bank in the UK, that's my smallest position. Like I was saying, to be honest, I don't. Do you know what? Actually, they've been having a really good run recently, which has been quite nice to see. But up until very recently, they've been one of the positions in my portfolio that just hasn't done anything.
So
They've really,
HSBC was in Canada as well. They might still be kind of kicking
yes,
around, but the
yeah,
Royal Bank has
international.
just put in a bid to buy out all their branches and
Ah,
assets in Canada.
okay, yeah,
I'm not sure. I haven't really heard much news on that or looked into it recently, so I don't know where that is in the takeover or buyout process or whatever it is.
yeah.
But
So
yeah,
they
Royal Bank.
do they just want to buy the buildings, or they want to actually like?
No, they're gonna take over everything that HSBC has in
Ah,
Canada.
oh wow.
HSBC is just basically leaving Canada, and Royal Bank said, "Thank you, we'll take all of that from you."
Oh wow, that's yeah, that's going to be. I'd like to see what the stock price does when that happens for both companies. That would be
Right?
interesting. Yeah, for sure. Okay, I've got one REIT in my portfolio which is called Tritax Big Box. No, but
Never
see,
heard of it.
no, these are all foreign names. Basically, they have a lot of the big warehouses that companies like Amazon and stuff use for holding their goods. Put simply, um, yep. So there's that one, and then I've got a renewable company called Trig. Again, wind farms, stuff like that.
Yeah.
Renewable energy. Sure, people know. And then back to the two ETFs that I mentioned earlier. And then the last one is Airtel Africa, which is quite a new position and quite a new addition to the FTSE 100 as well. So that's where I am in terms of dividend stocks in my portfolio. Haven't got a crazy amount, looking to add some more. But when I first started the portfolio, I was really a bit off topic, but when I was first starting making my dividend portfolio, I was wanting lots of diversification and I wanted all of these different companies. But realistically, I didn't have thousands and thousands and thousands to actually put a significant amount in each company. So I thought I'd start smaller and then add companies as I go so that I could actually have a decent amount in the company so that the dividend paid wasn't 1 penny. It was a bit more like 10p.
Right.
So that's kind of the motivation behind having a small portfolio and trying to grow it over time.
So a couple questions from that. The
Yeah.
REIT that you own, did they just own real estate in the UK or in other countries as well?
I think they have some in other places in Europe as well, but I
Okay,
think the
interesting.
majority is in the UK.
Right, right,
I was thinking about adding another REIT in actually, but I wasn't really sure what to add.
right.
So
So
something
then,
to look into.
um, next question comment is your overall portfolio between both your dividend portfolio on the one side and the non-dividend
Yeah,
on the other side. It sounds like you have a pretty good strategy there of keeping them kind of separate. But just how many
just in my head.
total
Yeah,
individual positions do you have?
not including growth or
No,
including.
including everything. How many?
Oh, okay. Oh God. I'm going to count. I'm going to give you an exact amount rather than a guess.
Okay,
One,
so while
two.
you're counting, I'm going to explain why I'm asking is because recently it's become kind of a hot topic here on the podcast. I've had so many guests,
Okay.
some that have like 10 to 12, others that have, 15 to 25, others that have 30 to
Okay.
40, and some that
Yeah.
have had like over 50, over 60, over 70. So it's just,
70.
yeah, the numbers have been
Wow.
all over the place. So it's just become a curious question I've been asking everyone recently.
Yeah. 10.
10 total. That's it.
Yeah, that's it. And then ETFs. Yeah.
Okay.
I think
So,
that's going to grow very soon. It's going to become probably more like 15 within the
okay.
next few months, I would say.
And then I guess what is your number of companies that you would get to and then say, "Okay, this is enough companies. Now I'm just gonna keep adding
Hmm.
to the companies that I have."
It's a good question. It's not one I've really thought about. I think I view it more as I will add any company that I think is going to be a good position to have. If that means adding two more and being done, fine. If that means adding 12 more, fine. I don't really have a number. I just view it as I want in my portfolio what I believe are going to be good quality companies, however many that may be. Um, I it is a really interesting point because I think there's arguments for and against. In terms of for, it's like diversification, etc., and then against it would be like, okay, if you're getting to the point where you've got hundreds, are they all good? Is there a lot of overlap? Do you need all of them? Stuff like that.
Could I
So I
just buy
don't
an
know.
ETF that has 20 of
It,
them in it and be
you get
done
to
with
that
it?
point, don't you? You get to that point. Yeah. So I don't have a number for you, but it would just be however many I wanted that I saw were good companies, I think.
I think that's a good answer. I think that's a
Yeah.
good answer.
Yeah. I've not really ever sat down and thought I must stop when I hit 13. It's not really
Yeah.
ever been like that.
So currently I'm in the 20 to 25 range,
Yeah.
and there's a few more that I would like to add, but at the same time I in the back of my mind I'm saying, "Dave, keep it under 30."
Yeah. The thing is with me is that because I've got them ETFs as well, you could easily argue that I have hundreds,
Right.
you know, but as an individual holding, yeah, not that many. Are you thinking to stop soon then? You actually, or you
Yeah,
just see
so
what happens?
really the only other ones I wanna add are more of the Canadian banks because, like I said, I've only got one of them
Yeah.
at the moment. I only have one of the there's 3 big, telecoms in Canada:
Yeah.
Bell Canada, TELUS, and Rogers. I probably wouldn't add Rogers, but I would add TELUS. I do have a small position in
Yeah.
Bell, and that might be it, and then just keep adding to what I have.
Mm.
You know, I'm sure you're aware I have several REITs. I really like, that exposure to real estate without being the landlord.
That
I
yeah,
really like the fact
perfect.
that they're all monthly dividend payers. They just
All of them.
yeah, they just keep coming every month, and
Wow,
I'm like,
nice.
"Thank you."
Yeah, I bet that is quite nice. Yeah, we don't have really that many good monthly paying dividend stocks, to be honest, here in the UK. So that is quite nice. What's your largest holding? Like what company?
I'd have to look actually. I mean, in
Sorry.
terms of shares, it's probably RioCan, which is a REIT. I think I have
Okay.
250 or 270 of those shares, and
Yeah.
at about $20 a share, that adds up pretty quick. So, but again,
What's
that
your
month
oh sorry, go on, Dave.
I was just gonna say it's a monthly payer, so
Mm,
every month they pay me enough in dividends to buy another share, basically. So, I don't have automatic drip just because the
yeah,
brokerage account I
I
use
don't
is
either.
doesn't have automatic, so I just reinvest
Okay.
everything manually, which is fine. I actually like it better because
I do.
that way I can say I can dollar cost average. I'm like,
Yeah.
"Oh, this one's down this month. I'm gonna buy
Yeah.
5 shares of that," or
Yeah.
whatever the case may be, right?
Yeah, I agree. I actually prefer manually reinvesting because it gives you the option to say, like you said, this one is at a lower price this month than I've seen it over the last 6 months. I want more of this whilst it's at this price. Or
Exactly.
my exposure to this sector is just a little bit high at the moment. Instead of reinvesting into that, you know what? I'll put it in a REIT. I'll put it elsewhere. I prefer that. I mean, having it automatic would be, I guess, less manual. But to be honest, when you're really interested in investing, it kind of becomes fun, doesn't
Oh,
it?
so
It's
much.
good to do. Yeah, I don't really want anyone else to take care of that. I want to decide where it's going.
Yeah, that's a great point. And then just I think it's surprising and unfortunate for you that you don't have more, monthly paying options,
Yeah,
and the reason I pretty much started my portfolio this is just going back a few years after the divorce, where I was really focusing on the monthly payers because we have a lot of really good monthly payers. There's a lot of REITs that are monthly
yeah,
payers, and my strategy, my thinking is, okay, well, at some point, whether it's 10 or 15 years down the road, I want these dividends to be paying my bills for me, and the bills come in
absolutely.
every month. So
Yeah,
I want to have that income coming in every month. And then, like I said, I view my quarterly dividends as bonuses. That's just okay.
yeah.
There's another 10 or 15 or $20 that showed up this month. I love it.
Yeah, for sure. That's a good way to look at it. I think for me, it would have to be just because there's a lack of monthly payers, it would have to be just me dividing it and making sure that I'm managing the money well enough when I get to that point. But yeah, I'm with you there, Dave. I want to get to the point where, I can take care of my food bill, I can take care of my electricity or my rent or mortgage, whatever it may be, just through this passive income source.
Yeah.
That is crazy that you can do that. It's really, really cool. And I don't know how much you've thought about this, but I was thinking that what maybe I'll end up doing is that I'll have my dividend portfolio, which will hopefully be able to sort of pay for my bills. And then I'm talking in retirement or whenever I'm leaving my full time job, hopefully earlier than retirement age, whatever it may be. And then I might withdraw a very small percentage of the overall portfolio to just add that up. That's kind of how I'm viewing it. But I guess with you, it would be all from dividends because you're obviously basically 100% in, right?
Yeah. So,
Yeah.
and I guess going back to obviously you can still get paid every month with quarterly dividends. You just have to really
Yeah.
figure out the companies that, okay, this one pays in January, this one pays
Yeah.
in February, this one pays in March, and then, just cycle it around. So
Yeah.
you can still obviously, have dividends coming in every single month. I guess for me, especially when I was beginning, it was just way easier to look at these REITs. And again, REITs, real estate, the buildings are built, they have, great tenants that aren't going anywhere.
Yeah.
Um, so like the one I mentioned, RioCan, it has several properties throughout Canada, but the one I'm most familiar with is in a city just, um, 45, 50 minutes east of me, and it's the city I was born in, and so I'm very familiar with the city.
Yeah.
Actually, it's called Kingston. And,
Okay.
yeah, so the RioCan Center there has, like, a Home Depot as one of the anchor stores. It has movie theaters, it has restaurants, it has, like, a Best Buy, and it has a couple Canadian Bank branches, and it's just got, like, tons of tenants in that massive acreage, like, it's the size of 3 football fields,
Yeah.
and,
They're not going
so
anywhere.
it's not going anywhere, right? And they
Yeah.
have several properties like this throughout Canada, and they're not all of the RioCan's properties aren't just retail either. They have properties in other sectors as well. So
Diversified. That's
they're
good.
diversified, exactly.
Yeah, that's really good. Yeah, I've done a few videos where I look at how you could make a monthly pay-in dividend portfolio. Um, and it is really fun to do, but it's kind of difficult to think, okay, this company pays in January and April. This company will pay me in February, and try and actually get all of the months
Right.
to be covered. But yeah, I do think that you, even if you didn't end up being paid in 1 month, as long as you managed your money okay, you could technically kind of get an income every single month for your dividends.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. Well, awesome, Haley. I see we're already well over 55 minutes. We've talked
Oh
about
yeah, God.
so many subjects. Um, it's been great having you again. It was a little bit different because on the live panels, I try to have people that have already been a guest, and had
Mm.
agreed to be a guest, but it was like, hey, come on the live panel. And
Yeah, appreciate it. It was
I
fun.
really like that live panel. I called it the international version, like with
Yes.
you in the UK and Justine in the US and John and
Yeah.
I here in Canada. It was a lot of fun to have that other perspective. And if you're
Mhm.
not getting sick of me yet, I think it's April, I'm doing one that's all females, and
Sign me up
I'm gonna have, I think, 5 or 6 women that
now.
have already agreed to be on. So it's gonna be probably a lot of chatter because it's gonna be a little bit more difficult with 5 or 6 different people all trying to
Yeah.
get a word in edgewise, but we'll see how it goes.
Yeah. I mean, I'd definitely love that. And if for whatever reason not, I'll be fully supporting it. And maybe you can do a part two, because yeah, I love what you're doing. I love the fact that you're just bringing people together that will, have a shared interest. And what I really like as well is that you're wanting to give a voice to people that perhaps
Wouldn't
don't
have
have
one
a.
otherwise or
Exactly, yeah, and you're not just viewing it as, "I want this person on because of this." You're thinking, "Okay, well, I don't really see many women talking about it, and I'd like to bring that perspective on." So
yeah.
that's really, really nice. I like the fact that you're doing that. So keep doing what you're doing. Oh, the dog's not happy.
Yeah, I don't know what he's barking at, but I guess that's my signal.
Yeah, he's hungry. You've got to go feed him. But honestly, thank you so much for having me as a guest again. Really enjoyed it. Love hearing perspectives from different people. And you've taught me some things about Canadian stocks and REITs that I'm gonna go and have a little look into.
Awesome, and again, thank you so much for spending another hour of your time with me, and
Always.
if you're still watching at this point in the video, subscribe. It's the rules. You're still here an hour later, just hit the subscribe button.
Love
Subscribe.
it. Subscribe.